right, good evening, everybody. Just let me know if you can hear me okay. All right, thank you, Linda and Brian. Okay, we'll go ahead and join palms as we begin. And you can repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. And putting the palms down. All right. So welcome, everybody. Good to see you all this evening. Happy Lunar New Year to everybody. Very nice to be here at the Dharma Bum Temple, leading from here. Looking out at a nice big empty space. Looks nice though. And I know you all are here with me, so I'm not worried about that. But glad you all could join this evening. I think the teaching that really sits with me the most right now, always really, but is the teaching of impermanence, just the never-ending cycle of change, and just learning to embrace each moment as it arises. And always working on moving beyond judgments and critiques and expectations, and just sitting with appreciation. And as I often say, during this pandemic, when we closed for 16 months, and now we've been closed again for coming up on a month, after being open for 6 months in between there. We didn't open a temple 15 years ago to have it closed. But even as I sit here by myself, looking out and seeing the empty cushions and the empty chairs and the empty pews and all those things, I'm still just filled with gratitude that we have this temple. And I can be here in this empty space with a roof over my head. And, we're spoiled in San Diego, so once it hits 60 degrees, we all freeze. But I look around at just this beautiful temple that, we've all created together. And every one of you that, has been here, which is many of you, and those who've never been here or maybe yet to be here, we together create this space. And, as I see the beautiful tankas and the paintings and the teachings on the walls and the projector up there and the fans and the old organ, these pews that are nearly 100 years old, and the incredible shrine space and statues, the lights, all these things that are just, they're just physical objects, but there's so many stories and so much history behind all of them. And without all of you, none of this happens. So to be sitting here in just this empty space, I still sit with gratitude because I really embrace the impermanence of everything that we're going through right now. And um, even just the ability to be closed for 16 months and still maintain a space like this is remarkable. So many things have just shut down and closed their doors and gone for good. And, here we are. I feel in many ways the temple, even though it's closed, is thriving as much, if not more, than it ever has with our ability to reach more people. The 6 months that we were open in between these two kind of shutdowns, to be able to run a virtual temple and an in-person temple, just really working with the change that we have in front of us. So, as always, I try to at least lead this temple as an example of how I want and hope, I should say, that all of our lives play out, which is just embracing each challenge and difficulty as it arises and giving your greatest intention and effort and being very genuine. And then you see what happens. And if you're not tied to expectations or outcomes, that was a question that came up last class, I believe it was, how do you deal with expectations, planning, things like that? And if you're not tied to the end result, if you're not tied to the outcome, and you're just fully invested in your effort and your intention and right action, then you begin to, I think, let go of this expectation or any outcome, and you just practice. So with that, just a few thoughts, rambling as I look around, and it's funny, as I see all of you here, and I won't rattle off all your names now, but as I see all you here sitting with us, and I look out and I see the seats you would be in, and the empty chairs and the empty cushions, and all of you have your favorite seats, and some of you've moved over the years to a different seat, and so it's just kind of neat. And to me, that is the practice of, we've talked a lot about the last week or so of Thich Nhat Hanh and no birth, no death, no coming, no going. And for me, this is the practice of, no opening, no closing, just present with what is. So here we are. So with all that rambling out of the way, we'll go ahead and start a meditation practice. For those who are joining us for the first time, welcome. There's a chat box there, as you can see somewhere on your screen. Feel you're welcome to say hello or share any thoughts as we begin. But as we start the meditation practice, again, for those who might be new, nothing's going to happen to you. You won't float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. You're not going to figure anything out whatsoever. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room you're in or outside or wherever you are. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often helps sliding to the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten if you're on a chair or couch, however you're seated. Also, just trying to sit upright. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or on the lap, whatever is comfortable. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment. of the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe, knowing with each breath there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move, and most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's not from anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with our own mind and our own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in, where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Meditation is not necessarily easy, not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, but it's free. Meditation is free, Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it takes time, it takes patience, it takes diligence, it takes effort. So with that, I think I'll just pause there. And always, I really just prefer to respond to your questions. So again, if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. You'll see a chat box there on your screen. Feel free to type in questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And I'll use the rest of our brief time this evening to respond to your questions. So I'll turn it over to you. I'm laughing in my head because, it's always that, especially when we're all here and there's that moments of silence before the questions start. And as I roam around and look at each person as we sit, and I begin to observe just the discomfort on people and the awkwardness, the uneasiness, the avoidance of eye contact, all those things that occur when there's silence. And many of you have sat with me before, and so you've heard me say this, but it's that moment right there that I probably appreciate and enjoy as much as anything, because it's just so real. It's just this moment where it's just silence, and that's great, but it makes people uncomfortable, but it shouldn't, but it does. So, anyways, questions. Let's see here. Brian, how should a Buddhist respond to violent situations that might require self-defense? So, first, and if I remember correctly, I think, Brian, you're relatively new. I think you asked a question maybe a week ago, but I could be completely wrong. Anytime people ask a question that starts with, how should a Buddhist, or what do those Buddhists think, or what is the Buddhist way? I always want to, not just for you, but for anybody else who might be new also, kind of just, level set things and to try to help us move away from this label or box that we put around someone who may be Buddhist, right? Let me put it to you this way, and I'll eventually get to your question. But I'm a Jewish guy, raised Jewish family, had a bar mitzvah, all that stuff. Um, in my entire life, I don't think anyone's ever walked up to me and said, "How should a Jewish person respond to a violent situation?" At the same time, I know tons of Christians and Catholics and Muslims, and I would never ask them, how should a Christian or Catholic or Muslim respond to a violent situation? What I want us to begin, again, not just for you, Brian, but for everybody to explore, is that at the core of it, we're just human. So what tends to happen, and I understand the nature of your question, it's a great question, but I just want to kind of broaden our view a little bit here. What tends to happen is, for those who are new to Buddhism, we think that there's like a Buddhist way of doing things. And I'm not necessarily saying that there's not, but I've found it to be a kind of hindrance or difficult if we try to box Buddhists into being a certain way, right? Regardless of somebody's religious faith or belief or how they identify, that doesn't mean they do everything that their religious leader said. So those who are Buddhist don't do everything the Buddha taught. Those who are Christian don't do everything Jesus taught. That's just the way it is. So when we look at questions, I think it's helpful to explore, instead of how should, my first master always said, Jeff, instead of looking for answers, look at how you explore the question. Change the question. And so instead of saying, how should a Buddhist respond to violent situations? I would look at that from a standpoint of, what did the Buddhists say about how to handle violent situations? Because when you look at it that way, it doesn't matter if you, Brian, or anybody else here is Christian or Catholic or Muslim or Jewish or pagan or lack thereof. This isn't about one religious label being a certain way. So, what did the Buddha say about responding to violent situations? There's a few things that come to mind, and hopefully that first part is beneficial. But there's a few things that come to mind about understanding violent situations. I'll get to the second part about self-defense. But anytime that anyone is acting out of violence, I grew up an angry kid, pretty violent, pretty destructive. So anytime I would have acted out of violence or rage or anger, I know what that's like. And that was coming because I was suffering in my own mind, in my own heart. So anytime that we see other people doing things that are violent, it helps to understand that the reason they are very often acting that way is because they're hurting, they're angry, they're sad, they're depressed, they're lonely, whatever it might be. They're unhappy. They're experiencing what the Buddha called dukkha, which is suffering, discomfort, angst. And these emotions and these feelings lead us to, say, violence. So I think it helps from and this is a very, pretty broad question, but anytime, whether it's violence or just anyone who's yelling at us or angry at us or upset with us, whatever it might be, could just be friendships or, intimate relationships, whatever it is, understand that they are acting out that way because they're suffering. For the most part, people aren't roaming around happy and peaceful and all of a sudden just being violent towards you. All right. So I think that's the first part, is to understand the causes and conditions, as is taught in Buddhism, that lead one to be violent. And when we can understand those causes and conditions, and we have what the Buddha taught, which is compassion for them, our judgments, our hatred, our anger towards them goes away. For me, I just always, in situations like this, resort back to personal experiences. But, 25 years ago, working with kids who'd been physically, sexually, emotionally abused, they had experienced tremendous amount of trauma, and therefore they were very violent. Now, if I only saw the violence and only focused on the violence, then I'd be missing really the whole picture of understanding why they're being violent. And once you understand why they're being violent, again, your heart begins to open, and you no longer judge them for being violent. You start to understand them. And if we're looking at, making change in ourselves and in the world around us, then we must understand where the violence is coming from. The second part of situations that might require self-defense. Now, I'm not a big fan of hypothetical situations. I really never have been, especially with just a kind of one-line sentence here via text is really difficult to explore. But I'll just put it to you this way, that in just about any situation, we have an opportunity. Not always. There are very specific circumstances and situations that this might not be possible. But very often, probably more often than not, we have an opportunity to remove ourselves from a situation where violence is occurring and not respond back. Now, our ego may get in the way, our craving to fight back might get in the way, our feelings, our aggression, these types of things may lead us to wanting to have this self-defense and fight back. But if someone walks up and punches me, there are a million things I can do other than punch back. So again, too many really variables here to determine the proper way to respond in every situation. But if at all possible, remove yourself from situations that might require what you call self-defense. So hopefully that's helpful. And I see I thought of framing it that way. I apologize. But, I appreciate that, but never need to apologize. And in my response to you, I'm not suggesting that you're wrong. I'm just framing it differently, not just for you, but for so many people who are new to Buddhism. And it's a very common view to think, well, these are what Buddhists do. And, I could line up a room of 100 Buddhists and I can promise you they all act differently. So, hope that's helpful. Other questions, meditation, Buddhist practice? I'll just add, and often the question comes up around these issues where there's a common, I would say, misunderstanding or view that Buddhists are just like a doormat, and that means they just allow things to happen to them. And the two wings of Buddhist teachings are wisdom and compassion. And there's nothing wise or compassionate about allowing yourself to become a doormat, meaning very specifically with regards to abusive relationships, domestic violence issues, which I see a lot, and things like that. The Buddhist practice is not to just sit there and allow yourself to be harmed. Remove yourself from that situation. That's very wise and compassionate. It's wise to remove yourself, and it's compassionate because if you remove yourself from it, you are stopping the abuse from happening. And I'm also not suggesting that if you're in a situation where domestic violence is occurring, that you should not defend yourself or do whatever you can to keep yourself safe. Those are also very delicate issues that I've worked with very intimately for years. So please allow yourself to be safe until you can remove yourself from that situation. But if it's just this ego thing that, someone You're at a bar and somebody takes a swing at you, and all of a sudden you think, well, I'm going to act in self-defense, so I'm going to punch them back. Different situations. Someone takes a swing at you, you can quite possibly walk away or run. Other questions? Do one more question if anybody has anything. All right. Well, good. Then we will close on that and we'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the 5.5 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic, and to their family and friends who continue to suffer at this time. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before you all jump off here. And it's interesting, some of you, I know many of you, I'm sure, noticed that, since we started leading again, and during this pandemic, I've always transferred merit to all the lives that have been lost, and for the longest time, I've been saying more than 4 million lives, and truthfully, I hadn't looked. at the global number in quite a while. And I knew that obviously it had been more than 4 million, but I didn't know what it would have jumped up to. And just the other day I looked, and I was quite saddened to see that it had gone up to over 5.5 million people. Um, so I just don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we're very much in this pandemic. 5.5 million lives have been lost, not to mention all the family and friends, as I always transfer merit to, that are still suffering from this. And so, yes, I get it. It's been 2 years, and maybe people are annoyed or they're tired, um, but it's not done. So let's try not to allow maybe lack of patience or whatever it may be to get in the way of the fact that people are still getting sick and dying every single day. Um, so, uh, with that, thank you all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 15 years ago to bring Buddhist practice to those who show up. As I alluded to, we closed for 16 months, opened for 6, and now closed again for the last month. Just about everything we do is online, whether it's on Zoom or YouTube. The whole schedule's on the website. Buddha for You also closed, so if you need anything, you can jump on that website and schedule to have anything shipped or curbside pickup for that. Still no plans to open yet, still going one day at a time, still staying incredibly cautious and going a lot slower than probably most places. And that doesn't mean that we care more about people. It just means that we care a lot about people. And I'd much rather sit in here by myself and look out at a room completely empty than sitting here with a room of 80 people and have everybody worry and wonder who's sick and who they're sitting next to and all those things. So if you've come this far in life and made through all the obstacles you've gone through, then we can continue to be patient and hold off a little longer before we put people at risk. So thank you all for being here. Again, a happy Lunar New Year to all. May it be a healthy, happy, prosperous one for everybody. And we'll see you soon.